SNL skit where like you just like get excited about surprises.
Welcome everyone. How are you doing? Great. We're excited that we have so many parents and students that are here today to really listen to students and then also get the professional staff perspective of kind of what's going on at Vanderbilt and how we can help students transition to Vanderbilt if they're first year students, and also just to make their time here as successful as possible. So this is called Welcome to your student to our big pond, or actually, your big pond. Wait, your big fish in our big pond. There we go. Dealing with something with a fish in a pond. So we're really glad that you're here today. We will be each just speaking for a few minutes and just kind of giving you some information, and then we're also going to have time for question and answer. Jennifer, lovely Jennifer, you want to raise your hand? Jennifer's the administrative assistant for the Center for Student Wellbeing, and she's passed out cards. If you haven't received a card yet, she's going to come around. There's pens that can be shared. And if you just have any questions that haven't been answered after we speak, please feel free to write them down. Jennifer will come around and collect them. We'll have a couple different Q&A sessions. And again, just really glad that you're here, and we hope that this is helpful for you. And my name is Catherine Drodas-Cuthbert. I'm with the Center for Student Wellbeing, and I also oversee Vanderbilt Recovery Support, which is our collegiate recovery program for students that are in recovery from addiction or just in the contemplative stage of their use.
Hello. 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 Sorry, I'm getting over an illness, but I'm like good now. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a loud voice anyway, so like I control people. But okay, oh, it's on video. Okay, lovely. Hi, my name is Ken Salvinson. I am a senior at Vanderbilt, and this is my third year at Vanderbilt. I'm actually a transfer student. But I should say first, I am a peer guide at the Center for Student Wellbeing. So where Catherine is one of the professional staff, we also have peer guides, which are student leaders who do kind of similar levels of coaching, etc., with other students. So we coach students on like emotional well-being, stress management, time management, coping mechanisms, all those sorts of things. So Catherine has like trained us, and we're like big Catherines. So that's why I'm here. So just going to talk about myself for a few minutes, which is like my favorite thing to do, so it's fine. I'm a transfer student, so I came to Vanderbilt my sophomore year of college, and I transferred from a school who will remain unnamed, but it was not as academically strenuous as Vanderbilt is, because not many schools are. And so when I got to Vanderbilt, I got slapped in the face. Like, not actually. Like, people are really nice here, but like the academics were just like insane. They were like comparatively, it was so difficult, and it was so different than high school, obviously, and way different than my other university. So I was just like really struggling with how to balance that academic load. And then in addition to that, Vanderbilt has a real thing where everyone seems like they have their entire lives put together at all times, and everyone seems like, oh, we're gonna like, I'm gonna study so much, I'm still gonna go out to all the parties, still gonna have a great time, like, I'm gonna get my 8 hours of sleep somehow, I'm gonna eat clean, go to the gym, like, it's just like, somehow it's like, it seems like everyone just has their whole world put together, and they already have their 5-year plan also, and so, when you walk in, it can be really, really stressful because it seems like you don't know what to do and like you're behind. And that's actually not the case. Everyone at Vanderbilt does not have their lives together. We're all just collectively figuring it out. And as soon as students realize that, they'll be in a much better position. And also, I know a lot of students struggle with like kind of like an imposter syndrome when they get to Vanderbilt. I definitely did, where I was like, how did I get here? Am I smart enough to be here? I feel like I'm not. And that type of thing is like not uncommon for students at Vanderbilt. So if you hear your students as freshmen, or first year students, sorry, if you hear them saying like, oh my goodness, like, I failed this test, what do? I shouldn't even be here. Like, that's not that abnormal. And just support them, love them, and encourage them, because that student is valuable and great for the community, and we would not have let that student into the school if they weren't able to be here and weren't going to contribute. So just like giving the students confidence is important. And yeah, that's good for now. Cool.
Hello everybody, my name is Maggie Drummond. I'm a first-year master's student in Peabody, and I'm also the graduate assistant in the Center for Student Wellbeing. I work with Catherine and the rest of the professional staff in one-on-one coaching, as well as the recovery community that Catherine mentioned, Vanderbilt Recovery Support. In addition to being a master's student, I also did my undergraduate degree at Vanderbilt, so I liked it so much I did it twice. To give you guys some background about me, I'm from Rockville, Maryland. Do we have any Maryland people in the house? Oh, awesome. Small but mighty. And I came to Vanderbilt as a transfer student as well. I will say that at my first institution, I did not feel very supported, and mental health was a big part of my undergraduate experience. So when I came to college as a freshman, I was in a city school, and claiming your college as part of your identity was pretty uncool there. So I remember I was wearing like a college lanyard, and someone walked by and was like, that is such a freshman thing to do. And I was like, oh my gosh, because it didn't really align with my vision for college, and I really wanted something where community was a big piece of it. And so I'm really grateful that I made the decision to come to Vanderbilt, because there is a strong emphasis on community and Vanderbilt as part of your identity, and that resonated with me, especially, you come to college and you're leaving behind everything that comprised who you were before. So especially like for me, I came from a loving home with high school friends who I was very close to, and you come into a place where none of that is present, and that was really difficult. And I think something that made it difficult for me as well was this emphasis of college is the best 4 years of your life, and these are the friends who are going to be standing next to you at your wedding, and like just enjoy it because it's going to be the best. And like that was just so much pressure, like as soon as I got to school, especially freshman year, and even my first year at Vanderbilt, which felt like a do-over of freshman year, it's like I don't feel that way. I'm meeting a bunch of strangers, trying to make new friends in a very high pressure environment, and as soon as my experience didn't align with this idea of like your first weekend you're going to be at a party and you're going to meet your best friend and like also your future husband, like when that didn't work out, I was like, what is wrong with me, and I'm going to have a bad time now because this isn't aligning. And I will say that when I graduated, I do feel like I made those friends and made those connections. I can't comment on the future husband thing yet, but I just needed to give it some time. But coming into it with that pressure, it really made me judge myself and how I was operating in my undergraduate career. So I think something that I'm grateful for my parents is that they never put that expectation on me. They were very realistic with me about, it's okay if this is a little awkward at first, and sometimes you're going to feel lonely, and that's okay too. My freshman year of college at my first institution, I took the bus home like every other weekend because I felt very lonely, and I felt very alone in that sensation of I'm not making these bonds that I thought I would. And then coming to Vanderbilt, there was that community, but there's definitely still challenges that you face as an undergraduate. I think for one thing, Kensel touched on this, like just the pressure and the comparison to other people. So, you know, a lot of these kids who come to Vanderbilt feel like we're the smartest people in my high school, and then I come to Vanderbilt and I'm not, you know? And that was really difficult for me. Like, thinking of myself as a very intelligent person was a huge part of my identity, and when I came to Vanderbilt and felt like I was coming up short compared to other people, that kind of left me very lost as like, how am I going to define myself? And because I didn't know, I just felt like if I'm not the best, then I'm the worst, you know? And that is a difficult burden to carry when you're trying to juggle everything that college throws at you. So I would say just like normalizing that for your student, you know, is really important. Like, again, my parents and I have done a lot of reflecting on this, and like it was also hard because my parents are very intelligent and successful people, so I didn't feel like I could necessarily be open with them about how I was struggling. And now, like, when we look at it in hindsight, they're like, you totally could have come to us, but we just didn't know how to have those conversations yet. So there is definitely a sensation of feeling like everybody else around you is doing so much better than you are and juggling it so much better than you are. And I felt that way up until I graduated, and now working in my role at the Center for Student Wellbeing, I see so many students who come and say that, and they're like, all my friends, all my fraternity brothers, all these people have it together, and I just feel like I don't. And I'm like, I wish I could be like, all of you are coming and saying this to me, so maybe you're all just really good actors. And I don't think there has to be that sensation of panic as an undergraduate, but I think the sensation that other people aren't going through it is what contributes to that panic, you know, because when you feel like you're the only one that it's happening to, that makes it worse in a sense. So I really encourage like just normalizing all of these things and acknowledging the fact that there is a lot of life to be lived after college, and this isn't going to be the only 4 years of your life where you make friends and have fun, and it's okay if things don't match up, and it's okay to hit stumbling points as well. I remember I failed calculus at Vanderbilt, and I thought that they were going to kick me out. I had a very doomsday perspective on that, and I will say that I think Vanderbilt and most colleges really want to see you graduate, and they will do whatever they can to support you and have you stay and have a good experience. So, you know, when I failed that class, I just thought, this is it, I'm done. And I've seen for myself and many of my friends that like Vanderbilt will extend that hand to you if you reach out for it, and will give you numerous chances to succeed. And so just things like that that feel like the end of the world, it's really not. There is a shining light at the end of the tunnel. You know, you're really starting your life. Like, I think college is such a special experience, and so unfortunately I think part of that trade is that you have to go through that anxiety and fear in order to appreciate how wonderful it really is. And I'll just close up by talking a little bit about the mental health piece at Vanderbilt, and in my experience, that was a huge part of my story as an undergraduate. And again, at my first institution, when things started to come up for me, I didn't feel very supported. I didn't even really know where to go to seek support. I think something that I value about Vanderbilt is that they work really hard to make those supports very visible. Particularly for me, I got involved with the recovery community at Vanderbilt as an undergraduate and entered into recovery as an undergraduate in Vanderbilt in 2015. And that was a huge life-changing decision that I had no idea how to approach, and definitely didn't feel like there would be anyone else at a competitive institution that could relate to that experience. And that the presence of the collegiate recovery community here, but also all of the mental health services, you know, the care network, the care providers, the counseling center, they were all there for me every step of the way and made it a very structured process where I felt no amount of judgment or like, we think less of you now for doing this and making that decision. I just felt supported all the way through. And now, like, looking back on it, I'm just very grateful because I've had the opportunity to move past that point in my life and now come back and help and work in that same office that helped me. And that's a very rewarding experience to me because I do think part of that desire to appear like everything is fine is a part of buying into that is pushing down all of your problems. And I do think, you know, it's just natural in a high pressure environment that sometimes you're going to feel lonely, sometimes you're going to be depressed, sometimes your issues are coming to fruition in this pressure cooker environment, and it's okay to not feel great all the time, and it's okay to reach out to those resources. And I just felt like if I did that, I would be deviating so far from the norm that I'd never bounce back from it. But I really did, and I mean, I'm so grateful for that because my life is so full today. Like, to come back here as a graduate student is such a privilege, and I just really encourage you to encourage your students to take advantage of everything that college offers. I spent the first 2 years of my college career just like doing my homework so I could go to a party or go to a tailgate or whatever, and that's a fun part of the experience too, but it's not everything. You know, there's speakers, there's clubs, there's everything, there's people from all over the world, and this is one of the unique times in your life where that's concentrated for you. So I really encourage everybody to just take advantage of everything it offers because it is such a broad experience, and it can be whatever you want it to be. And I'll just close by saying I really do think that, I know for a parent it's also scary to send your child to college, and I will say that I'm now, as a staff member at Vanderbilt, I've seen kind of behind the curtain, and I know that like these people really do care about your child. Like, this is more than just a job for them. Like, these people, the professional staff and the people particularly who work in the mental health realm, this is their life. They're here on weekends, they're working late hours, they're doing everything they can because they really care about it and not because it's just their job to do it. And I don't think that's the case everywhere, so I'm grateful that it's the case at Vanderbilt. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Droz Cuthbert with the Center for Student Wellbeing. And Jennifer's going to come around. If anybody does have any questions, if you've written them down on the cards, if you want to just kind of maybe hold them up, Jennifer will come around and collect those. As Kensal and Maggie shared, there's obviously this kind of reoccurring theme that we hear of perfectionism and really this idea that individuals have to have this facade of perfection. And I think that that's one thing that is really a common thread with the work that we do. And so part of, I'm also a parent, so I have 2 stepchildren that are also I have 3 stepchildren total, but 2 are in college as well. So I also get how difficult that can be to send your children away and then to also leave them in the hands of those that are there to help support them and care for them. And we really are a resource-rich university. The resources can exist, but we also need students to come and contact those resources. So while we offer so many different services, and we do reach out to students as well, but it's really important for students to stay connected, and that's a way that we can help them. And as a parent, I know it can be really hard being far away and also trying to also give your students space, because that can be a really difficult challenge as well. But part of being in college is to have that autonomy and sometimes to have those failures. Some of you may have students that are currently in Chem or Calc, and those are also reoccurring themes that we see over and over again. Those are really difficult classes, and the exams are nearly impossible. And so the thing that I would ask is to be supportive. They're hard enough on themselves. They really don't need additional pressure. They are hard enough on themselves. They really take everything to heart. If if an exam doesn't go well, if a course that they're taking doesn't go well. So being that listening ear, checking in, maybe not hovering and helicoptering, but checking in, sending text. And last year when we did this panel, one of the students talked about how sometimes she didn't always respond to text messages, but she always read them, and they always meant a lot to her. And so that's something that I took to heart too, because I don't always get those replies. Maybe like every other time I get a reply, but I just keep sending them, keep telling them I care and I love them, and I'm there if they need anything. So with the Center for Student Wellbeing specifically, we do have an open house today, so if you're available, it's from 1:30 to 3:30. We'll be making some smoothies, some fruit smoothies, but it's also just a great way to see some of the resources that we have. We offer individual coaching for students, so this is for well-being. It's also for alcohol and other drug, either prevention or also working with individuals for harm reduction, working with individuals that are living a substance-free lifestyle, how to integrate fully into the community, and also students that are in recovery. So we offer a lot of different services in that realm. We also have academic coaching as well that takes place at the center. We have our peer guides, which we're really fortunate to have as well. We also help students when they're making that transition. So whether it's a first-year student or a student that is transferring from another university, that can be a big challenge. And so part of what we do is try to give them skills. It's, coaching is really very action-oriented. The whole idea is that someone, when they leave our office, they have something to do. So it's not just talking about things. We will do that as well, because that's important also, but we want them to be some action attached to it. We also have weekly well-being practices. So we have guided meditation, silent meditation. We have yoga for trauma survivors as well. We have massage, which is nice. We have our recovery support meetings. We have 2 meetings a week, but there's also, in addition to that, an NA and an AA meeting on campus. We have a friends and family group for individuals who are impacted by somebody else's use. So our goal is really to make sure that we are supporting students. And there's so many different resources that you're going to hear about this weekend as well. We're just kind of talking about specifically the well-being services that we offer at the center. We have workshops on financial well-being, on mindfulness, on test prep, so that's really huge. We have, I think, 4 of them coming up in October, since midterms are coming up. So these are really ways for students to be connected. They can also utilize the space, both the classroom and the meditation room, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They just need to come in with their card swipe so they can study in our space. It's really a very lovely, calming space. They can come and do self-guided meditation, self-guided yoga. We have mats and all of those type of things. We have cushions and chairs for meditation. So it really is a space that students can utilize. But as I mentioned before, it's also something that students need to come to. So we offer the services, and we just hope that students will come and utilize those services, which I will say, we're having the most amount of students I think we've ever had in just the first month and a half of school. So that's also very exciting. There are, at the end of this, there are some beverages and some cookies and snacks afterwards. So if you'd like to have any of that. And again, if you have any questions, we really want this to be a dialogue. So Jennifer's going to come around right now and just collect any cards that you have so we can start answering questions. All right? Thank you. Yeah, if you can just hold them up, that would be great.
All right, we have a question that I can get us started with. This question says it starts with a compliment. The students on the panel have amazing stories. Their honesty is heartfelt and appreciated. Thank you. Is there a program where these students address the freshmen early on? I wish my freshman was here listening to them, which is a lovely sentiment. And yes, we have the Common View presentation for freshmen. So that happens, I believe, their first weekend, either their first or second. And we have the weekend after move-in, we do a Common VU, that's the title, presentation for all the freshmen, where they hear representatives from the Center for Student Wellbeing, from Greek Life, from Alcohol Education, and a representative from the collegiate recovery community as well. So they get a little taste of all of these experiences and lenses. And they also, their first 2 weeks are just jam-packed with this kind of talk, because we really do want students to engage with the resources, so part of that is making it very visible to them. So they do it's called True Life, I believe, where there's several different visions leaders who do different scenarios and what the response would be. So anything from sexual assault to alcohol poisoning to just getting in trouble with your RA, what all of these things look like. So there are a lot of initial resources for students, but again, they're here year-round, so we hope that the students will engage with them and not just kind of forget about them as part of that whirlwind first 2 weeks. But yes, there is exposure early on. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I can take this one. All right, so this question says, my son is in a large seminar class and wanted to see his professor for extra help. The line was out the door and each student only had 5 minutes with the professor. Are there peer tutors on campus? Also, any advice on how to get one-on-one with the professor? Great question, whoever asked this. And so I know those large seminar classes can be a little bit intimidating, especially as a student, because usually in high school, you don't have, depending. But so what I would recommend, yes, there are peer tutors. First of all, there's a tutoring center, like a certified tutoring center on campus. And this place actually has like a writing studio, which is really helpful, where you can meet with like writing coaches who are like professors and graduate students who help you with your writing, and that's also the tutoring center. And so that will usually look like juniors and seniors and also like graduate students who have taken, say, calculus or general chemistry before and gotten an A in it, and then they are paid to help students for free. So it's a really good resource. It's on campus. And it's kind of like right by the Commons. It's in the 1801 Edgehill building. I don't know if you want to be writing this down. I don't know. But that exists. And then as far as getting one-on-one with the professor, I would just recommend to your student to stay engaged with the professor. And like, I would say keep bothering isn't the word I want to use, but just like stay like up on it, because strongly suggest like stay in the professor's ear, because these professors, they get it, they understand, especially when they teach these difficult classes, that there's going to be a lot of anxiety, there's going to be a lot of people wanting their help, but they also definitely want to help the students. So if a student is really struggling and needs that extra help, the professors, like 9.9 times out of 10, will offer that extra help. And also in those large classes, they usually have teaching assistants. And so definitely use your TA as a huge resource, because that's what they're there for.
And also encouraging students, this is one thing that we also do at the Center for Student Wellbeing, is connecting with professors right away, going to office hours. That's why they have them. And it's ideal to have those conversations prior to there being any challenges, but sometimes it doesn't happen. But even so, if there's something that's going on, connecting with professors or the TAs during those office hours can be really crucial and helpful for getting them to really understand which direction they need to go in, as far as like how to be better at studying, what information is really the most important to be focusing on. That can be the helpful tips that they can get just by having that one-on-one time with professors. Another question was, what about students who don't self-refer? And are there any other methods of intervention? So this is a great question. So again, we can encourage, we can offer the resources. One of the things that we do have on our campus is we have a student of concern report. And so professors, RAs, other students, staff members can write this student of concern report, or can fill this student of report out, and it's on the Center for Student Wellbeing website. So this is another way that if someone's seeing that maybe a student is missing several classes, a professor may fill out one of these reports, and there will be follow-up with that. It could be an RA maybe feels like a student is really isolating, and it's becoming concerning, because sometimes people just like to have time to themselves, but if it becomes a point where there is some concern, then that report can also go out. We also have a care team, which is, it meets weekly, and these are from all the deans of the colleges that meet, and with Student Care Network directors as well, and deans. So it's really a helpful tool to make sure that students that there is some concern about have follow-up and have follow-through. There's also a welfare panel, so if something does become a crisis, we're able to intervene and help with students as well. And so the whole idea is that we really are trying to create a culture of care where individuals are not only getting help for themselves, but also trying to help their friends seek help as well.
This question says, my son has told me very little about his experience as a freshman here. How can I get him to talk about it or open up more? I didn't think that was going to be a laugh question, but yeah, it's funny because as an undergraduate, I would like send my dad like a text once a month, but now as a graduate, they're like dodging my calls, but so it gets better. But I think in my experience, it's either sometimes I don't want to share things with my parent in that experience because things aren't going well, and there's a fear of disappointment. You know, I think whether we realize it or not, most kids put their parents on a pedestal for good reason. And also, maybe I'm exercising my agency and making decisions that my parents might not like, so I don't want to share that either. I think there is a social culture at Vanderbilt that students aren't always inclined to share with their parents. So I would say something that was helpful to me was when my parents would share their own experiences with me. I felt more comfortable telling them about mine. Again, just kind of removing the pedestal a little bit to be like, you're a real person too, you had these experiences too, and just putting it on more equal footing of like, I feel more comfortable sharing with you now because I know that you have some experience with this as well. And I also think just in general, specific questions also help. You know, just sometimes it's kind of hard to be like, how was your day? Oh, it was fine. You know, but being like, how is this class going? You know, just gathering information on the specific things they're involved in so that there is a point of entry for like pointed questions could be helpful. And I'll pass this on to Catherine as well since she...
And I also struggle with this as well because I have a first-year student that, you know, I send a text and it's like, yes, no. So I have to remind myself to also not ask yes, no questions. So that's part of it, is being willing to ask questions and not always getting a large response to them and being okay with that. Because sometimes, as Maggie mentioned, students are going through things that they may not be ready to share with you. It doesn't mean that they won't eventually. But again, just being there, showing your support, you know, I love you, I care for you, I miss you, always go a long way, even if it's always, it's not always reciprocated. I think it's just one of those challenging things. A lot of people laugh, so I feel like this is something that's pretty common, and I understand that as well. All right, so here's another question that we have. How do you support your child if their first test grades, biochem, are not great? So again, this is something that's fairly common. And then I'll follow up with the additional kind of comment. How do you know, or question, how do you know if it is normal or if they're unable to handle the work, support versus failing? And I think this is a really important question. And this is one that we don't always know the answer to. Even as professional staff, we don't always know the answer to it. So again, it's asking questions, kind of seeing where someone is. And sometimes, and I know this is gonna be hard to hear because I know we're paying money and we're invested and we want the best for our children and for our students. Sometimes it's okay. Not, you know, not saying failing out of, you know, an entire semester, but sometimes it's okay to not pass a class or to maybe not get an A in a class. And that's probably not, you know, something that you all want to hear. But sometimes that's when students learn the most, is because now they have to realize, what do I need to do differently? And having it be put more on them, because again, there is a lot of pressure. Students are feeling these things. They're not just saying, oh, I did horrible on this first, you know, chem test or first bio test, and I don't care. Even if they do act like that towards you, they really do care, because we're seeing it. We're seeing the tears. We're seeing, you know, the in the challenge. And so part of it is just having those conversations. And again, it's not you know, math. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. But having those conversations and trying to see, okay, is this just something that's just a challenge, or is this something that I really need to be concerned about and step in? And as students, do you all have any?
Hi again. Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off that, off what Catherine was just saying, and say that it's definitely about growth for your students. And a lot of times, like Catherine was saying, like when you fail, you definitely grow more, I would say, than when you succeed. From my personal experience as an undergrad, I know, like, I wrote down on my initial card to talk about this and then kind of forgot. But when I first got to Vanderbilt, like I said, I was academically, it was like pretty hard and stuff. But I did okay throughout the semester or whatever. And then I had this research paper in one of my human and organizational development classes. And I had never written like a research paper in APA format, and it was like 25 pages. And I worked on it for like 2 months, like did so much research, put in so much work on it, and the semester was like winding down. It was near the end of the semester, and I was like feeling very emotionally drained, like trying to do the perfectionist thing, trying to keep it all together, and I got 68% on this paper. And I just like ran into the professor's office and just like burst into tears. I was just like, God! Just like when life just like comes at you all at once. And especially when you, like as a student, when you've worked so hard on something and you don't get that payback, like it feels awful. It feels awful. And so kind of like Catherine was saying earlier, like do not put more pressure on your students, because like, especially if they've gotten to Vanderbilt this far, like they're clearly driven and intelligent, so they will put that pressure on themselves, because I was horrified. But my professor was like, my professor is great, such a nice lady. Dr. Nolan, great lady. And she pretty much was like, Kinsell, I love you, but this paper sucks. Like that was pretty much like, as I like burst in, just cried for like 30 minutes, she's like, it's fine, like you're great, but like this is what's wrong with it, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, your sources suck, your paper sucks. And I was just like, she didn't say that, but that's the translation. And so I was like, oh my goodness. But like, she was right, like the paper was trash. And now as a senior, that was when I was a sophomore, now I have to write those papers like fairly frequently. And I love the professor, and she always edits my papers for me still. And so now I can send her stuff, and it's definitely improved. So that was the point of all this, was like improvement. My papers are not as bad now. I know how to do citations, etc. And so it's just like all about the growth, and the professors will support you. And I think that Vandy professors often have a really good mix of that kind of like tough love. Like that's what I needed to hear, honestly, in that moment, because like what I wanted to hear was like, oh, it's okay, like, actually, my bad, you really got an A. Like, that's what I wanted to hear, but what I needed to hear was like, you are not as smart as you think you are, and you need to do better. Like, this work is not going to get you where you want to go, and I'm going to get you where you want to go by grading you like this. And so, like, that's what I needed to hear, and that's what she told me, and like, in a loving way, and has supported me ever since still. And so, yes, that is a story. That's crazy.
I would just say, kind of, especially to touch on the second half of this question, how do you know if it's normal or if they are unable to handle the work? When I started college, I wanted to be a doctor, and I'm not a doctor, and I probably never will be one, and that's okay. But I think really, and I think a lot of us could probably share this experience, nobody can answer that except yourself. You know when, like, do I just need to study harder, or is this just not clicking? And the STEM just was not clicking for me. And I think the thing that helped me was, like, my parents and the people in my life being like, it's okay if you want to change your mind. You can do whatever you want to do here, and it's okay if it's not medical school. And that really, like, it made a huge difference to me, because it just kind of felt like, especially, the way that undergraduate is structured and like credits and everything, it can feel like you don't have a choice and you can't change your mind, and you started here and you have to see it through. And that's not everybody's path, but it was my path, and I'm happy that I changed course and wasn't trying to fit, a square peg into a circle, because everybody is different. So I do think really only your student can make the decision for themselves whether this is a matter of like strategy or if it's just not destiny. And just being supportive and being like, just, tell me how I can help, and whatever is right for you is what's right for me too. Just that kind of approach is what helped me.
And some of the things too to look for if if your student is in distress, there are some things that are a little bit more challenging because they're not right in front of you. But having those conversations, if normally the person is really positive and bubbly, and all of a sudden they become very withdrawn and really secretive. Those are things to look out for. If somebody normally really, takes care of themselves, and they stop bathing, and they stop, wearing fresh, clean clothes, they wear the same clothes over and over again, or you talk to them and it sounds like they haven't gotten out of bed in a few days. These are all signs. These are all signs that a student is in distress. So this is also kind of, when we talk about, you know, is somebody just having a hard time, or is it something that's much more difficult for them to be able to deal with. So thinking about those things, also if you're kind of hearing language where it sounds like somebody is using substances as a way to self-medicate or to deal with kind of their anxiety or with their depression or with things that may be going on. Those are also signs to look out for. If somebody is no longer either going to class or just no longer really taking the time to study, if there's a change in weight, either gaining or losing a significant amount of weight, those can also be signs to look out for. If somebody is, you know, just kind of their overall temperament and mood is different, if they become really hostile and angry when they haven't been like that before, those are also things to look out for. And I know it's difficult over text, and especially when you're not face to face, but you know, checking in, having those conversations can be really important, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a dramatic change in someone's behavior, in someone's you know, kind of personality, and also how they present themselves to the outside world. Those are things to look at.
If you identified any of those, what would be the next step for a parent?
So it can be different for each parent. Some parents choose to come to Vanderbilt and just have that eye, you know, kind of their eyes on their student, have those conversations one-on-one. Encouraging the student to get connected to the Student Care Network is really important, because from there they'll be connected either to the University Counseling Center, which we have a robust counseling center at the school, and then or to the Center for Student Wellbeing. If the student is, you know, telling you about any type of concern, if there's any you know, possibility of a sexual assault or something like that, we do have a Project Safe Center on campus, and they are individuals that individuals can call. They have a 24-hour hotline. There's also a walk-in or a drop-in at the University Counseling Center as well, so individuals don't have to always have an appointment if it is a crisis. There's also Let's Talk, which are hours that are done in a few different spaces around campus, and that way individuals can just, again, they don't have to have an appointment, they just need to show up and start having that appointment. So getting them connected to a resource is really important. And Jennifer's going to come around and just, I think we have a few more minutes. If anybody else has any questions, if you want to hold up your card, she'll go ahead and grab those. This question asked, student of concern report, can this be submitted by parents? If a student is identified, will parents be notified? These are great questions. Yes, parents can submit a student of concern report. Also, due to kind of the privacy rights, there is not a follow-up for the person who submitted it. There is some discussion on how to do that, at least to say, like, yes, this student has been followed up with, but not giving information about what the discussion was. So those are really great questions. So that is available. Again, it's on the Center for Student Wellbeing website. Yes, there is a box that you can click that asks if you want to remain anonymous. You can click that. So that's a great point.
This question says, if a student needs to be hospitalized for psychological help, what kind of coordination is there with your department? Is the center automatically notified for continuation of care? What services are provided during hospitalization? And are services available over the summer? So kind of to break this down, I can speak to a couple pieces of this and then I'll pass it off to Catherine. We do have Vanderbilt Medical Center has a psych hospital just right up the road, and I do know students have utilized that. There are, once it goes there are medical privacy laws that come into place that protect your students' privacy as a patient of that hospital, so we're not getting all their information. There is a very structured support in place for students who do decide to take some time off and return from a medical leave of absence. We work with those students, the Student Care Network works with those students to reintegrate them in and make sure that they're supported when they're coming back. I can also speak to students who might take time off or go seek immediate help for a substance abuse problem. We, should the student choose to utilize that, have a lot of support in place, especially for like immediate return. We have recovery housing on campus for those students. So a sober atmosphere with a lot of accountability and support installed into that. As for services provided during hospitalization, I know the psychiatric hospital, you can walk in, a friend can take your student there, whatever that needs to look like. There's a detox unit, it's a residential care, and Catherine can speak to that better than I can. As far as services available over the summer, the Center for Student Wellbeing, we house the recovery program, which offers meetings all through the summer and those kind of services. And I'll pass it off to Catherine because she can flesh that out better than I can for you guys.
So new this year, they've created the Student Care Network, and within the Student Care Network is the Student Health Center, the Center for Student Wellbeing, the University Counseling Center, as well as the Office of Student Care Coordination. And so while we work together to really help make sure that students are supported, each office does have kind of different ways that they interact with students. So the University Counseling Center is a confidential resource. So when students go to the University Counseling Center, they're going and they are covered by the confidentiality of being at the space. For the others, we follow FERPA, and so the idea is that students are, their privacy is protected. So we may or may not know if a student is coming back from the psychological hospital on campus. Oftentimes, someone in the Student Care Network will be notified either by the student, or if there was an RA or an area coordinator or somebody in residential education that helped to walk the student there, that information may be shared with the dean, again, just to make sure that the follow-up is taken care of. And especially when we talk about students that do take medical leave of absence, we do make sure that students have a lot of support when they come back. They create a student success plan to make sure that things are in place when they're back on campus, and that they have meetings and individuals that they're connected with as well. Yes, so all of our services are available year-round. So the university does not close down over the summer. So we have all of our services, the University Counseling Center's open during the summer, all of our spaces.
And I just have one more quick note to add. Something that I think Catherine mentioned that made me think of this is your dean is also a great resource, the dean of your student's college. Each college has a dean, and there's also just an overarching dean of students stratification. So a dean is somebody who can communicate on a variety of channels. So that might not be your first stop, but it's a great resource if it is a very critical problem. They can help with communicating with professors if academics are being affected and things like that.
This is unrelated, but I just wanted to say, Vandy's really great also, because I know, a lot of times, it's kind of, I always feel kind of, weird when I'm on these types of panels, because it sounds like, oh my gosh, we're all struggling so hard, there are some struggles, of course, as to be expected, and we just want to let you guys know that there's resources to help your students if they need the help. I will just say that Vandy's a very caring community, and just quick story about caring community at Vandy. For me personally, when last year in December, I had to fly home unexpectedly 2 or 3 days before finals started because there was a death, my high school teacher passed away. And I actually was flown in to give the eulogy at his funeral the day before I had my finals. So I flew back to California. I'm from California. So I flew to California on Sunday night, woke up, spoke at a funeral on Monday morning, was back and then stayed the night on Monday, flew back to Nashville on Tuesday, and walked off a plane into a final. And was like on the plane, writing a paper, like all that stuff. So it was like really not a great experience, but like obviously it was like really important for me to do. But I was just like, ugh, like I obviously was like feeling really pretty gross after my final was over, but I did pretty good. I got a B. But I think all things considered, I'll take it. And I like walked back to my room and I was like, oh my gosh, like just so like kind of disheveled. And in my room, my suite mates had actually like gotten to my fraternity and had like everyone had written like handwritten notes of like support for me, just like saying like we love you, we're supporting you, like sorry for your loss, things like that. And also gave me snacks, like candy and Skinny Paws. My favorite, they gave me Skinny Paws. Like they gave me snacks, and I was like, yes, and I felt so loved. And what I told them is what I like. This is like my favorite thing that I say about Vandy because it's true. When I was at my first school, and I really, really didn't have a good experience. I didn't feel a sense of community. I didn't want to be there. And so when I would get upset, I would always think, I just want to go home. I want to go to California, I want to go home. But at Vanderbilt, even in the worst of times, even when I'm struggling a lot, this is my home. And I feel so comfortable and confident saying that. And that just like warms my heart to think about that. But like this is home, and like it will be home for your students. We're here to support your students, and we love your students. And the students on this campus really love each other, look out for each other. So yeah, cool.
And also just knowing that this can take time. So it's this first semester can be the most challenging. So just know that if you give it a little bit of time, if the student gives it a little bit of time, they can make those really strong connections. Thank you all again for coming out today. We really appreciate it. This is how you help your student. You come out to events and you're there and you show up.